Welcome back, fam, to another video. Today we're going to be talking about manual or automatic transmissions with the Camaros. And it's going to apply to 1LEs, SS's, and the Turbo 4s and V6s as well. So if you haven't taken the time to like and subscribe, please do so. It'd be greatly appreciated. But let's go ahead and get to this. So, of course, you know, if you watch this channel, I'm a fan of manual transmissions, but this video is going to be open, and it's going to be, have an open mind to it, where I'm not going to be a manual elitist and tell you need to get a manual, man. There is scenarios that you might want to get an automatic, and we're going to dive into those to make sure you get the actual right transmission for you. Don't let some YouTuber tell you what transmission you should be driving. Make that judgment for yourself. You're the one putting down fat dough. So let's get to this. So let's go with some of the positives of an automatic transmission. So the first thing you might want to get automatic is if you don't got legs. And jokes aside, but that's if your legs aren't up to par, maybe you had some knee surgery or something of the nature, then yeah, you're probably not going to want a manual. They even have kits so you can brake and gas with your steering wheel. So that's pretty crazy to me. Okay, most of us aren't talking about that, so let's keep going forward. But if you have something that's going to limit you had back surgery, your lower back has huge problems, something of the nature, then a manual may not be the best for you just to start off with. You got to enjoy your car. Moving forward, is the automatics have a more consistent times as far as being able to switch between gears and how they lock up and stuff like that. A manual, you can miss your gears, we all know that, or if you don't actuate the clutch perfectly or something of the nature, you're going to end up with a slower time. Now, of course, that's the drive for the manual, and that's the enthusiasm for it, is that you get to learn how to become a better driver. So the automatics, you can get consistent times. So if you're at the drag strips and that's what you're gonna do, then maybe that's what you want to get is an automatic, so it's consistent. But you can still get really good times out of the manuals, so it's something to consider. And you get a little bit better miles per gallon with the automatics as well, and that's because they have cylinder deactivation, so you can run like at a 4-cylinder on the freeway. And basically you get up to 30 miles per gallon on technically a V8, muscle car, which is awesome. In order to do that, it has some air-fuel mixture valves inside the exhaust to help make sure the switching on and off is nice and smooth. You don't really feel it, and there's of course some other features built in. So if you're really focusing on gas mileage, then that's an aspect that you can chase there. So as far as I can kind of come up with, these are the main positives for the automatic transmission. Now we're going to move on to the manual, and we're going to go over some things that are positives for the manual. So the first and foremost thing is the manual actually puts down more power. Ask your tuner, ask people at dyno cars, the manuals put down more power. You have a direct linkage to your rear diff, and the automatics got to go through a torque converter. And so the manuals are going to put down 20 to 30 horsepower more to the wheels. It depends on the car too, so that's something to be aware of. On top of that, the traction control is a little bit less invasive on a manual, so you can have quite a bit more fun with it. Not saying you can't break them loose with the automatic, because of course you can, but the manual gives you a lot more freedom with that, even just on the factory tune. So what comes with that is freedom and fun. So the manuals are a bit more fun. If you watch the video of Fast Life Russ, where he was trying to learn how to drive a manual and he was trying to slam gears, he was having fun, and he eventually got it. So he admitted it was a fun, and I gotta be honest, I have a lot more fun in a manual than I do in automatic. And the freedom you get with a manual is that you can put it in the wrong gear, or you can do something wrong, but you typically won't. And when you get that perfect shift, or you get that great downshift, or whatever it is, it's rewarding as a driver, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. So you really learn your car quite a bit. And something to consider, so when I had an automatic Mustang GT, one of the things the muscle guys say hi to each other, to their kind, is they'll rev at each other as they're driving by. Well, that's really easy in a manual, because you just push a clutch in and rev it. In automatic, you got to go and grab the lever, shift it into neutral, make sure you put it in neutral and nothing above it, and then rev it, wait for the revs to come back down, and then throw it back in the gear. So you can do it, but it's a little bit awkward of a transition to kind of do it. It feels very computerized. I don't know how to explain that, but the process isn't as natural, I'd say, as you could in a manual. It's a little thing, but if you want to rev at a light, you want to rev through tunnels, that's part of the experience of V8, right? So something to think about it, especially if you're in park or neutral. You can't rev over a certain amount with the stall converter on a stock automatic. A manual lets you rev all the way up to hit the red line. Granted, you don't really want to do that at idle, but you can, and that exists, so you have a little bit more freedom with your car. So we'll kind of move on to a few things here. There's some negatives with the manuals too. Of course, you're going to be doing a lot more footwork, so you do hit the gas and the brake more often than you would an automatic, just gas and brake, because you got to do it between gears. You lift off more often, so you're using your legs a little bit more. It's pretty minimal, to be completely honest. It's just like doing anything else. You can miss shift or miss clutch. If you're at the light and street racing is your thing and you want to go boom light to light, if that's really like all your heart is set on, then I guess get an automatic. But realize that on the streets there's always somebody faster. In street racing, the cops are really just cracking down on it more than they ever have been, at least out here. So if that's really your main goal and factor, you can get a lot of enjoyment out of a manual without having to go constantly spank on people. Now, you're still going to, but if your main goal is just street races, I think that's why the autos are getting popular now. The 10-speed in the Camaro and the Mustang GT, it's the same trans. The 10-speed is actually really good, and it rips through those gears. But if you ever notice, these guys, they shift a lot. So I raced somebody the other day and they were in 4th gear while I was just at the end of 2nd. So yeah, it shifts faster, but it has more shift points in the time that a manual does. At least with the Camaros, the manual's gears are much longer, and that's a positive thing for us. In the Canyons, we've had automatics up there with the 10 speeds, and obviously they keep up with us and they're having fun and everything, but one thing I noticed is they shift a lot. So if you're coming up to a turn that's about 20 miles per hour that you really got to go 20 and you're going 60, for us manual guys, it's just 3rd to 2nd. It's a natural transition. But if you're going 60 or maybe 70, I don't always watch my speedometer gauge while I'm up there, but you got to drop down 3 or 4 gears to get you in your right gear. And that's a lot of button work. So you got to know, oh, I'm in 4th gear, and be aware of it, and then switch down. Where a manual, you know where you are because of the position that you put it in. It's very natural to know what gear you're in because you just put it in that gear. There's no question to it. It's kind of analog if you want to think about it in that sense. It's a manual lever, but that's actually better in this situation. It's the same reason why people like buttons in their cars and not those touch point type of things, at least in my aspect. So if you're in the canyons, you're going to be shifting a lot. You got to be aware of your gears, and you're going to be pressing more buttons. And sometimes you press the button 3 times, and it doesn't drop that much because it didn't get the first press. So that's kind of there's some aspects there when it comes to canyon driving as well. And that's why you see the 1LEs with manuals for so many years up until 2021 when the autos came out. And that was for GM to get more buyers. The manual's the driver's car. And we know that across, the board. But that's not to say that an automatic is an enthusiast car, because that's wrong. You can have a lot of fun in automatic, and plenty of people do. They rip. They do. But they compensate for their loss of power putting down with their gears. So that's another aspect, is that automatics 1st to 2nd, 2nd to 3rd, their gears are really hot. And you're going to rip through those gears fast and take off pretty hard. And as I mentioned, the manuals are much longer geared. So with that said, that's how they kind of compensate for their loss of power and putting down power. And that's just an aspect of it. So yes, the 10 speeds are technically faster, at least 0 to 60, and a little bit more consistent. You could get a good manual driver that could do it just as well. A new feature in manuals nowadays, and comes on the Camaros as well, is are kind of aimed to helping people that aren't used to driving manuals. So if I'm speaking to you and you're not sure if you're ready to get back into a manual, or you've never been in a manual, but you heard it's fun and great, well, the answers are it is fun and great. So a few things that'll help you and kind of alleviate your worries. And the first one is anti-rollback, or called hill assist. So if you're on a steep hill and you come up to a light and you stop and you're in first gear, and you take your foot off the brake so you could put it on the gas, and you got your clutch in so you're ready to start moving, well, your car will roll back, typically in a manual. And what the cars do now is they have a solenoid that activates, and it'll hold your rear brakes for about 15 seconds. So when you let off the brake and you got the clutch in, you're about to get ready to take off, it'll hold you in that spot. You're not going to roll back. It holds you for about 15 seconds. So it'll really sit there until it lets loose, and then you can roll back. If you want to avoid this feature, if you like rolling back on a hill like I do, because that's how manuals have always been to me, when you come up to the stop, just leave yourself in neutral and it won't activate it. So that's all you got to know. Another feature is the no lift shift. I don't do this. It just feels like I'm doing bad things to my car, but so GM doesn't actually promote this in the manual, but you can keep your foot on the gas at really high RPMs when you shift and not take your foot off the gas. So it's actually baked into the software to help with throttle input there. So it's a cool thing. You can get much faster shifts out of that. You can watch people do it on YouTube. I haven't really felt the need to do it. I've talked to people who've done it, and they said it's kind of negligible to probably the clutch wear that you do. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth it unless you're really chasing times down the track, but that's something to consider. And then, of course, auto rev match is the last feature. So if you look on my Camaro, I have been asked, why do you have paddles on your Camaro? Well, that actually turns on and off auto rev match. And what that does is, if I'm in third gear and I want to go to second gear, well, I got to get my RPMs up to match what second gear's ratios are, right? So, and normally what you would do is you'd put it down to second, you'd hit the gas with your foot, and then you'd put it back, you put it in gear. And you'll eventually do that as you get more familiar, more comfortable with the manual. You'll end up doing that because it's a fun thing to do. It feels great. Well, they do that for you. So basically, you could turn it on, throw it in a second, it'll blip the throttle and rev it up. That's how you hear some of my downshifts in my videos. Sometimes I'm doing it, sometimes my car's doing it. And it sounds cool, and it makes sense. The gear ratios between the gearings is a little bit of a jump, so this makes that transition smooth. If you're going down gears, you don't have to hit the throttle yourself and try to figure out if you're hitting too little or too much throttle to make it in the right RPM. It'll just do it. So very cool features. I'm glad they have these in the manuals. It helps out new drivers and encourages people to buy manuals. So if you're worried about, should I really get a manual? Well, I just want to open this up a little bit. I'm not a manual elitist, but I believe the manual makes the car. You're buying a car that's a lot of fun. You're buying a car that is made for fun. There's a V8 in it, and nobody needs a V8. I'm going to tell you that right now. Nobody needs a V8 in a Camaro, but we all, damn well why we buy them, and it's because they're fun. And I think the manual really expresses that and goes for full circle with the vehicle. When you change gears and you hit the RPM, and just the way it punches between the gears, because you have a little bit of an RPM loss, it hits different than an automatic does. In an automatic, you're hitting buttons to switch gears, or you're letting it do itself, and they kick. They're great, but it's not the same experience you would get in a manual. It has a more just rebellious feel to it to hit the road in a manual transmission, especially nowadays when I'm eating up cars that have much better automatic transmissions, and that's not really what it's about for me going out racing or whatever. I just enjoy it. I enjoy driving the car. I don't feel like I have to race everybody because I have, a fast V8 car. I just enjoy just driving the manual around, and that's not something I got out of my automatic. I would have a whole lot of fun on the acceleration, but any other time I'd be driving around, if you just wanted to drive around cool and smooth, it would shift for economy purposes. Now you could change that and shift it yourself at higher RPMs, but then it kicks a little bit. It's not as smooth because it's instant. It's an instant shift change, and you can't program a smoother, softer shift change that's adaptable all the time like you can in a manual. So the manual really just goes full circle with how you are as a person. I know a lot of us grew up in a generation where clicking buttons enabled and disabled things, and that's how we like things to be. But I would say this: drive a manual. There's a reason why they still make cars like this. There's a reason why they still do that, and that's because they're fun as hell, and you're gonna have a blast. If you don't know how to drive a manual, find a buddy that could go with you when you go buy the car. Have them drive it off the lot, and then go to a park, the biggest parking lot. Pull up your Google Maps or whatever. Find a parking lot within, distance you, and go learn it, because you'll learn it that fast enough to be able to get on the streets. It's not hard. These cars got good low-end torque, and the clutch pedal, it's not you don't feel the most, but you feel enough to be able to drive it. It took a little getting used to for me as well, but it had been years since I had been coming back from going back into a manual, but I adjusted to it quick, never stalled it. And if you do stall it because you're new, it's not the end of the world. Nobody really cares. Keep driving the car. They're in their minivan, and you're behind a manual car in 2021 trying to learn how to drive a car. I respect that, and you should respect doing that. So nothing against the auto guys. If you guys enjoy those things, keep driving them. The reason why the autos have gotten better in the industry is because people have been buying them, and that's what they want. So there's no problem with doing that. Keep making them better. We'll see how they go from here when cars go electric. I won't even get into that conversation, but I will say, while you could buy a manual transmission, get a manual transmission. It's the same reason I say, while you could buy a V8, get a V8. If you're going to do it now, because it's going to be gone, man. So go out, enjoy your manual transmissions or your automatic transmissions. You guys are dropping fat dough on these cars, so I hope you make the best decision that fits best for you. If you want to throw down in your comments what you feel you want to buy now, or if you have a strong opinion on manual or automatic, I'm definitely interested in that. And please throw that in the comments. Maybe there's some situations that I didn't really pay attention to or I didn't address. But overall, I actually wrote down this on paper, positives and negatives on both, and I have just more positives to a manual than I do the auto, even with trying to have an open mind. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you could like and subscribe, it definitely helps me out. Yeah. I hope you guys got something out of this, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.